One of the most popular up-and-coming characters for the Masters of the Universe, aka He-Man brand, is King Grayskull. And when I say up-and-coming, it's because he is a relatively new character to the brand, although at this point, well, 20 years, actually maybe not. But he's new because a lot of people are first becoming aware of him because of his appearance in the upcoming Netflix show. He got a lot of attention because he was changed from Caucasian to black on the show because they, ethnically diversify the cast. And this has brought a lot of attention to the character. So now that he's at the forefront of Masters of the Universe noise, well, it is like noise. But now that he's getting a lot of attention in the press and with fans, I thought it might be helpful to do a video explaining exactly who is this character, where did he come from, when did he first appear in the brand, and what is his relationship to He-Man, the most powerful man in the universe. Well, that's a lot of questions, and that's kind of the whole point of YouTube, is to answer questions. Well, that and, tell you how to fix a flat tire. All right, so let's jump in. So, King Grayskull in the new Netflix show is very much, looks very much like he always has, except that he now has black hair and dark skin. Now, He-Man and King Grayskull, all the stories of Masters of the Universe, take place on Eternia, which is a magical planet in the center of the universe. But King Grayskull is long, long ago when Eternia was known as Preternia, which was the ancient version of the planet where dinosaurs roamed and all that stuff. He was first named as a character in episode 35 of the 2001 Mike Young production series, Masters of the Universe. This was the episode that was a flashback to when King Grayskull ruled Preternia. Adam learns he has an ancestor, and his name is King Grayskull. And, I wonder if that's related to Castle Grayskull. We only get to meet him in one episode. He was planned to be in further episodes, but unfortunately the show got sort of canceled before its time, like so many others. I'm looking at you, Wonderfalls. So, King Grayskull in Preternia fought against the Horde and the Snake Men, and he created the very first Masters of the Universe. That's the name of the team of good guys, like the Avengers or the Justice League. They're called the Masters of the Universe, and he brought together different heroes from different areas of Preternia, some magical, some time-travelable, some giants, even a character who's one of Beastman's species was in there. And they all fought for justice and were also joined by the cosmic warrior Hero, who came from the stars. He was empowered by the overlords of Trala with the Sword of He. That's that shiny little blue sword there. And during the first Ultimate Battleground, Hero jumped between King Grayskull and Hordak, absorbing the full effect of Hordak's Death Blast, which was meant to knock off King Grayskull. And by essentially sacrificing his life to save King Grayskull, Hero then passed the Sword of He to the king, and it entered into the Grayskull bloodline. So that's the sort of origin of where He-Man gets his sword from. King Grayskull then used the sword to turn around and chop off Hordak's arm, because, that's what you do to characters who kill your best friend. And you can see Hordak's blue blood there spilling out. That's why he has blue skin on Etheria, because the blood rises to the surface on his skin, giving him a bluish tint when he's on Etheria. But that's a YouTube video for another time. Hero is given a hero's funeral, and all of the masters gather around him, deciding to honor Hero by building a great castle that will protect the sword. And this, of course, becomes Castle Grayskull. Here you can see what it looked like in Preternia when it was shiny and new and it was above a lake as opposed to a giant abyss. Eventually, a spell of Hordak's creates the abyss, but it was a much, it still had a skull face, but it was a friendlier looking castle, you could say, back in the day before, centuries passed and it became the castle we all sort of know and love from our childhood. Now, while this was the first animated appearance of King Grayskull, it's not the first appearance of him. So, back in 1982, with the launch of Masters, the heroes, He-Man, Teela, Battle-Cat, would often be advised by the spirit of Castle Grayskull, which essentially was the spirit form of the king. And this showed up not only in some of the mini-comics, but also in the record storybook that was packed in with the Talon fighter, and other early media, you would see kind of this skull, ghosty cloud thing that would form over the castle. We also, in one panel in the very first mini-comic, do see a flashback of the King of Castle Grayskull sitting on his throne. And this was actually the art we used on the King Grayskull action figure to connect this art with the character, that it was the same person. He wasn't named King Grayskull, he was just called the King of Castle Grayskull. And here is that first figure. So King Grayskull is important as an action figure because he was the very first Masters of the Universe Classics figure. He was originally planned to be the last 2000X figure, but those plans were changed when the Horsemen introduced a new form factor of a 6-inch figure, and we said, oh, let's scrap the plans to keep 2000X going, and let's start over with this new form factor and do classics. He came in a deluxe lights and sound box that was sold at San Diego Comic-Con, and at the time we kind of hoped we might be able to do 6 to 10 figures and sort of call it a day. We had no idea that he was going to kick off a line that was going to go for a decade. We also did a variant of King Grayskull for the show as a statue, which was 10% of the run. Think about 10% of the run, maybe 15%. It's hard to remember. My brain's a little, made of putty these days. But also came in the same lights and sound box that you could transform into a mini diorama of the castle. And the statue version was essentially the exact same tool, just in a repaint with sort of a metallic green wash that, well, made it look like, a statue with some moss growing on it and, some aging, if you will. It was based on the statue that Adam finds in an episode from 2000X, the episode 35, The Powers of Grayskull. That's how Adam is told the story of King Grayskull when he stumbles upon the statue. And of course, it being San Diego Comic-Con, we actually had to build that statue and bring it as a photo op, and that was a lot of fun. And that statue got some reuse. So, whether he was seen as a ghost above the turret of Castle Grayskull or now as an actual barbarian king, linking both of these concepts together to create King Grayskull really made him a character that's always been part of the brand from day one. And to celebrate the spirit concept of him that was shown in the early mini-comics, we offered a very, very rare Spirit of King Grayskull figure. In fact, by rare, only 30 of these were ever made. Well, 31 counting the one that was the prototype that never wound up in the package, but 30 packaged samples. And these were given to Mattel employees. The Four Horsemen got one. Yes, I got one. And we also raffled one off at San Diego Comic-Con to a very lucky winner. And a second sample was put up for auction to help children affected by AIDS, which was Mattel's corporate partner for charity, their charity partner at the time. So that was done at their Dream Halloween event. So 2 of them were made available for the public. This one at San Diego Comic-Con that was raffled off. That one there is actually, that's that prototype that was never put in package. So that's that 31st sample, which, yes, that one's on my shelf. And, so a fan got a sample, a packaged one, as well as the winner of the Dream Halloween auction. So, while a lot of fans obviously couldn't get this Spirit of Grayskull figure because it was done so limited and to raise money for charity, as well as to kind of, butter up management at Mattel by giving them an exclusive figure, we did a new version that was carded, that was available to everyone, and this was later in the line, and unlike the version from San Diego Comic-Con, this one glowed in the dark. Glowed in the dark? Glowed in the dark. Just to make it a little different. This was actually something Brandon Sapinski, who was the designer, wanted to do. Originally, it was going to be all clear, much like the first one, but he said, let's do glow in the dark. So it became glow in the dark. There was also a version released in the line that was just an alternate deco, and this was done because the first one, as a San Diego Comic-Con figure, was really hard to get, especially later in the line. And with King Grayskull being such an important character, he was re-released, and now he came with the orb that was the source of the power, as well as a sword that was sort of draining the power into the orb. It was a redeco of the original figure, so, same tool, but you could see there were some differences. Silver instead of gray, and the shoulder pads now had flock on them, which is that soft, fuzzy stuff that the vintage Panther had. And of course, yes, he came with that orb, because we wanted to give him a really important accessory to show how important he was. The orb was actually a purchase part, it wasn't tooled. One of the only purchase parts in the whole line. There have been fans who have made other sort of customs to show what he could have looked like had he been in the vintage line, as maybe both a spirit and as a full barbarian king. So that was definitely cool. It's really great to see when fans do art as both action figures and flat art. Now, King Grayskull did have a steed, much like He-Man has Battle Cat. King Grayskull had Battle Lion, and he was done as a figure as well, a modified version of Battle Cat with a new hat, well, he did have a new hat, new head, new headgear, and new saddle, as well as clip-on paw armor, if you will. And this was cool because you could also take this armor and put it on Battle Cat to make more of a 2000X looking Battle Cat. But it also worked great because now King Grayskull had his own mount and could charge into battle against the forces of evil, defending Preternia from, well, the forces of evil. And it was really great to, continue to get more Preternia characters. But wait, we weren't done yet. His wife, Vina, who was the first sorceress, and was a prominent part of that episode as well, in episode 35. Well, she also got an action figure, although for legal reasons, we couldn't call her Vina. There was a German or Norwegian doll called Vina, if I remember correctly, so we called her on package Queen Grayskull, even though she's usually referred to as fans as Vina. But hey, it totally worked, because on package, he was called King Grayskull, and his real name is Devon Grayskull, D''V''A''N. So, they both have first names. But on package, it's King Grayskull and Queen Grayskull. So a very, very important character to the mythology, the ancestor of Prince Adam. Eventually, in the bloodline, it would get to Adam, and King Grayskull would also be an advisor in spirit form to Dare, He-Man's son, in the future, when there is a energy version of Castle Grayskull protecting the Starseed after the original stone version is destroyed. So he still maintains to be part of the brand, even after He-Man, and when Dare takes over as the main character. Now, there was never a vintage figure of him, although fans have sort of imagined what it could have looked like had Mattel put out a King Grayskull figure in the 80s, arming him with He-Man's axe, shield, and sword. And there has been a lot of fan art. He's a very, very popular character, which is probably why there is kind of so much noise around the race swapping, I guess you could say, that he's getting in the new Netflix show, because he's He-Man's heroic ancestor, and he's always been shown as Caucasian with blonde hair, and now he is shown as black with black hair, black skin and black hair. So, a change, but Masters of the Universe as a brand has always been about change. A lot has changed over the years, but no matter how he's drawn, no matter what skin color or hair color or, animation, action figure, drawing, whatever form he appears in, he's still King Grayskull, and change is always part of the brand. So as we get ready for the new Netflix show, it looks like he'll be a big part of it, and the whole, He-Man between King Grayskull and Adam, as the sword is passed down through the generations until it reaches the one true He-Man. King Grayskull was the one who started the bloodline and received the sword from Hero, from outer space. And, he drained the energy from the sword into the orb to protect it, and now the sword can harmonize with that orb, letting Adam change into the most powerful man in the universe. And even though he never appeared in Filmation, it's cool to see that Netflix is incorporating him, which makes him part of the Filmation storyline now. So I'm really excited to see what happens. And now you know. And that's King Grayskull. And this is the Spector Creative channel, and a subscription, a share, a like, a bell ring, all of those are appreciated. It helps tell YouTube to continue to share these videos with other people. That's what it's all about, sharing toy love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.